What's up, people? Tim Blast here with a BlastCast episode 2. Casual podcast where we talk with music composers, producers, film directors, and everybody working in the film industry. I have my friend Matthew here. Why don't you introduce yourself and what do you do?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Tim. Thanks for inviting me over. My name's Matthew Carlton. I'm a film composer, just pretty much working on indie films and stuff like that, kind of same as you, same as a lot of people, I think. So just here to talk shop with you, I guess, which I always enjoy, talking with other composers and seeing how they like to approach things and see if there's anything I can learn from colleagues and peers, and see if maybe there's things they can learn from me and adopt into their workflow. It's always a learning experience.
Yep, exactly. That's why I like speaking to colleagues as well, because everybody is different. Even though we do similar things, like our jobs are so similar, but like our workflow is so different. How we were talking about the Cubase, the templates, and everything, and so we were talking about basically how we use Cubase as our DAW, and I, as probably most of my people that know me, use a big template with lots of different instruments loaded up at the same time. And Matthew, you have more of a custom template per project, right? Like, can you explain?
Yeah, I usually tend to, like, when I get a project, I usually tend to take a few days and like really think about like what's the instrumentation I'm going to be using, and I think about like what's that going to bring to the story. And normally I usually make a template that's probably going to have more instruments than will be necessary, but I like having a few options in there just in case the director doesn't like something. I'll kind of put duplicate, like instruments that do similar things but maybe they sound different, stuff like that, because I kind of like I like the fact that when I choose an ensemble, it's kind of limiting me, and it forces me to be creative. Like when I say like okay, I have these are the instruments, I have to make this work with this. It makes me, get those creative juices flowing. Like, okay, how am I going to approach it with just this stuff? Whereas like if I have like a massive template with every library I own loaded into it, like the possibilities are like endless. I could do so many different things. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. That's why for me it's like, I get the point. The usual limitations, they help creativity. For me, I guess it's more of a, like, when I get a new project, starting point is always strings or like piano. And then I would do like a skeleton score, what I call it, like just like basically play through the whole film a couple times and just like score it a couple times as I like with all my feelings that are happening at the point. And then I would just like bring that and then see whatever works, whatever melodies work, and save whatever I like. And then I try to like build the thing from there. But I get your point though. Like, yeah, with me, since I have this big ass template, I do get this frustration sometimes where, like I know what kind of sound do I want, and I keep like clicking on different patches and stuff, but I can't really find that sound. And it's this, I think it's because I have like so many different options. It kind of like limits, not exactly my creativity, but like the workflow a little bit. Like if I remember like back in the day when I used to have just a couple libraries, I would just go there and I wouldn't even think about sound as much, I would do melodies first and then think about sound. But now, like, these days I'm like, oh, I don't like the way this sounds in this particular cue. So I'll have to like, keep looking for a sound first and then start working on music.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. And I always keep a piano patch in my template just for sketching purposes, because I am a piano player, and so I like to just work things out that way. But I totally get what you're saying. Like, I mean, it sounds like you're doing the same thing too. You're basically creating a sketch. Like skeleton kind of sketch of the whole thing before you go back and start arranging and picking stuff. But like for me, like I still like to think like when especially if I get like a script ahead of time, that doesn't always happen, but it's very useful, at least in terms of like trying to figure out what I'm gonna do and like what themes I'm gonna do. I tend to not like write suites or anything like that, because I have done that in the past and it always has gone poorly because because like the film you see in your head when you're reading a script is not the film that is sent to you. So like I'll come up with like little themes and motifs that are non-specific. But getting the script and reading through it a few times and really trying to get into the brains of the characters, like and thinking like, okay, like what's this character about? Like what are they like emotionally? Like where does the story take place? You know, and that's what starts getting my brain thinking like, okay, what kind of instruments can help evoke like these feelings? Like, does this character feel like a particular kind of instrument? I've taken that approach where I've assigned instruments to represent specific characters instead of like a theme to represent a specific character. I've done that too. But yeah, like just having those limitations. Like I've also limited myself in other ways besides instrumentation too. Like sometimes I'll say like I'm only gonna use this scale.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm only gonna.
You go that far, huh?
Yeah, I'm only going to use these kinds of harmonies.
Wow.
Inevitably, like saying all these things, I keep saying I'm doing all these limitations. Inevitably, I end up breaking these limitations. Sometimes the director will ask you for something that is impossible to do with the limitations, and then that's okay. But this is just to get like a starting off point for me. It's just at least like I know I have to work within these parameters. How do I do that?
I was gonna say, so what do you prefer? Do you prefer to see the movie first, or you want to see the script first before the film?
I think I like seeing the script first.
Yeah, me too.
Just because it gives me an idea, even if the film feels totally different from my initial experience of the script. It still gives me time to start formulating ideas. Whereas, like pretty much like in instances where I've just gotten the film, those are instances where it's like I just got to go for the most part. When I get the script, I usually have time to kind of like stew the material and really think about it and kind of. Like, there's been, like, one film I did, a feature film I did, I had the script for, like, 5 months.
Oh, wow.
Or something.
Yeah.
And and that was really good because I was sketching out all these you know, tunes and melodies and motifs that I was using to represent the characters and stuff like that. And I kind of was also formulating, like, the ensemble, too, and I was having a lot of discussions with the director and stuff like that, and bouncing off like what if we use this instrument, what if we use that, and he's like, oh, that's cool, that sounds interesting. But by the time I got the film, like I already knew like what to do, so it was very easy to get started. Like I already knew, even though the film wasn't, you know, again it's never the same.
It's never the same.
I had so much to get started with. I had already gotten started in a way. It was just a matter of trying to make it fit the picture. But I had so many things ready to go. That
I remember on one of my short films, Remnants, I got the script like 4 months before the film was even like shot in production. So by the time it was edited, it's been like 7 months or something like that. And most of the themes that I wrote from the script actually made it into the film. Like interestingly enough, good. So, but then at another point, like I got a horror film, and I remember like writing a bunch of like, you know, like sound designers, like elements and stuff like that, because I didn't want to go too deeply in stuff. Because horror films usually it all depends on the edits, and you have to go, you know, you have to write music in a different way compared to like a drama or something where it's just more mellow, you know. But with that horror film, I remember that I got the script and I wrote all these like melodies and a bunch of sound design tracks. And none of it made it in film, and it just ended up being, you know, what do you call it? Like I had to like basically redo the whole thing again from the start, which is, you know, but I guess it depends, like movie by like film by film, like project by project, right? It's like,
that's why I also feel like it's easier to just have like little themes where it's just like a piano, because it's not the end of the world because you didn't spend all this time arranging, and it's just like, okay, I have a few chords and just like a 4-bar phrase that's that character, and then if it doesn't work, oh well, I'll just come up with something else. I don't have this like 8-minute piece of music, like character piece that I wrote. That has I spent all this time on. That gets discarded. It's just like a quick little thing that I came up with one afternoon.
I was gonna talk about this thing. So at the beginning of my career, I used to have problems with kind of like ego, I guess. You know, like first couple of my jobs, my gigs for film and stuff, I would write music, and then director would just completely hate it and tell me to, you know, obviously rework. Now these days, you know, I'm okay with it. I'm like, okay, whatever. But like back in the day, I remember like I used to have such a like emotional kind of like breakdown with it. Like, have you had anything of this?
A little bit. Obviously, the first time, because you get this, you know, very romantic idea of like what a film could, like when you're a kid, you're like, oh, like John Williams, oh my God, like you know, that's writing all this stuff. Like you get this like kind of like picture of like what this job is like. That's not reality. And the first time, like I actually experienced this in school. Like I did a documentary for my school's communications department. Okay. And I wrote this, you know, I wrote a bunch of cues, but like the first cue like that I wrote, I was like, oh, this is it. Like this is awesome. And I'm doing it, you know, like this is so cool. And so then I bring it to the director and he's like, no, like this doesn't work. Like change this, change that. And in my mind, I was like, what are you talking about?
I know, right?
Like,
yeah,
what do you mean? Like, this is what I wrote. Doesn't work, yeah, this is what I wrote. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean change it? Like, what? Like, and so that was a new experience for me. Yeah. But since then, obviously I've learned to live with it. But like, even after that, another thing on the same project that I learned was about music editing. I say music editing with like 1,000 quotation marks around it because they didn't know what they were doing, but but like about them like just ending a piece or a cue where you didn't intend it to end and stuff like that. Like they like.
What do you mean? They just like roll off the volume, like just fade out?
Yeah, you just like fade out in the middle of it, you know, stuff like that. Like I didn't even consider stuff like that at the time. Wow. Like now I don't care about music editing. It's like, oh, less work for me. Yeah. Like I don't care. Like as long as it sounds like that's what I intended, then I don't really care. If it sounds like garbage, then I care because it sounds like I made a mistake and not the music editor. But back then, like I didn't even know that was something they could do. It was like, no, I wrote it from here to here. You have to play it from here to here. Yeah. So that's another thing to get used to is like people tampering with what you've written. It's not just change, like telling you to go change stuff.
Yeah, they do it themselves.
They tell you that they like it, and then when you see the final product, you're like, wait, why did you chop this up? Why is that over here now? What are you doing? You know. Yeah. I mean, in my defense, they did a terrible job, and it sounded terrible. But the principle of it.
Yeah, I know. I hate it too. I remember like one of the first like student films that I did. Same thing. The music editor decided to add a little bass line to the cue himself. So basically, my cue had like I think it was
co-composing.
Yeah, he was co-composing. Yeah, but without asking anybody. So, well, director basically told him like, can you add more low end to it? Since like my mix wasn't as good because I didn't really know how to mix. So yeah, so he added a bass line from like this like really weird meaty like bass guitar, and it just like it threw the whole cue off because it was off tempo and it was just like horrible sounding, and I was just like, what the hell is this? And I kept like bringing it up to the director, and then director kept like blaming me for it. It's like, what is this bass thing? Like, why did you put bass in there? I'm like, it's not me, it's the music editor. He's like, why would music? Like, you know, and it took a while, I remember, for us to like settle this little debate, and then finally, like, music editor decided to like not use the bass. But it was so weird how at the time, I mean, it doesn't work like that in real world. Obviously, everybody's a filmmaker of like equal, you know. But like I guess in student films, you know, person whose parents paid for the film, which was the music editor at the time, he was the decision maker. Yeah, which was like horrible.
Also, like the higher quality a film is, and like the filmmakers, if they know what they're doing, usually make sure, especially in the music department, that everyone is in communication with each other. Oh yeah. So everyone's on the same page. Yeah. With student films, I mean, most of the time, I mean, even now, like some indie films, you know, I work on, there is no music editor. Like, they don't exist. Like for lower budget stuff. Yeah. I mean, not just because they can't afford one, but I think some directors don't even know like that's a job. In the music department, like, because they'll ask me to do things like, oh, can you fade this out? I'm like, no, like, like that's a music editing job. Yeah. If they you know, twist my arm about it, I will do it. It's not a big deal, but like, but I tend to get annoyed when there isn't the music editor.
I
and
know,
I'm
me
asked to
too,
do
me
music
too, yeah.
editing
Yeah.
job, like, oh, can you make this quieter? Or like,
I mean, it's not that like difficult, but yeah, it gets annoying sometimes. Yeah.
no, it's
Yeah.
not difficult. It's just
Yeah.
it's just like I thought it was done with this.
Yeah.
Why are you
yeah,
coming
yeah.
back to me?
Yeah. Oh yeah, actually, I remember a couple of years ago there was this one time where I was done with the score. Everybody was like, everybody loved it, right? And then they go to the final stage of editing. Well, I think not editing, like the color correction. And then 3 or 4 months later, after I was done with the film, like the producer calls me up and he's like, "Hey, can you change that one cue?" I'm like, "Dude, like that project is like long. I mean, I don't even know if I can open it. I mean, I can probably open it, but I don't know if it's gonna load up because my template changed, everything, like my VA-Pro changed, everything changed." But I remember like it took me forever to change that one cue, that just because like they weren't communicating between each other at the time. Yeah. So I feel like, I mean, that, I guess that only happens in like lower budget indie films where it's like the filmmakers are kind of new to this industry and they don't really know what's going on. But I know, like, I mean, I worked on, Universal film for Netflix, right? And I remember like the communication was just perfect. Like there's never any, like everybody try to make sure that everybody's on the same exact page. I feel like that's how it's supposed to be, but I guess like in indie world, yeah. For those that are wondering and trying to get into composing world, you'll probably deal with that.
Well, I actually have a contingency in my contract for just that situation that you talked about.
Uh-huh.
I basically have a stipulation in there that like if I've delivered the score
Mm-hmm.
and it's been approved,
Yeah.
if they come back to me with more changes, they have to pay
You
me,
charge
pay
more,
me
yeah.
more
Yeah.
money.
I mean, that's what I have it too. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that's
Oh,
good.
yeah.
If you have that now, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Now I have it, but back in the day I didn't have it. So
Yeah, that's definitely. If you start hurting people's pocketbooks, they're a little less likely to
to do
ask
it,
you for things.
Yeah.
I
I
it's
learned it
gonna
the
cost
hard way.
more money. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, never mind.
Yeah. Do you have like a lawyer that you work with, like an attorney that?
Not usually. I have like a template contract, and also I tend to refine it after every
every
film. Is like I should have had that in there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
But my contract that I use is actually based on. Like, are you a member of the SEL, Society of Composers and Lyricists? No. Okay, because they have a lot of like template contracts on there that are very useful. They have ones for for just licensing. They have ones for work for hire.
Yeah.
So I took one of those, and I kind of used that as like the blueprints for mine, and I kind of edited it to fit kind of my needs. I didn't just like take it like word for word.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
There's some things that I added. There's some things that I took out.
Yeah.
But for people who are just starting out, if they are a member of the SCL, then that's a
little
resource. Yeah,
that's good to know. Yeah, I hired like a lawyer for just to do this one template contract for all of them, and then usually I mean, it wasn't that expensive. Like I was probably thinking it's gonna be like thousands of dollars to get it, but he charged me like a little bit for it because it was only like 2 hours of his time or whatever. But yeah, like I just use that, and it depends on a project, I guess. I just changed like the project name, and like I add some things sometimes, or like remove some things that are not needed. Like for example, I have a part in my contract where if I use any real instruments, like not talking about MIDI instruments, I will get like more pay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, which is smart. A lot of people find that interesting, and a lot of like producers, when they look at it, like that's kind of weird. Like, so what are you using if it's not real instruments? I'm like, well, you have the computer generated, music, or I can have like a recording with, So that's like one of the things that people find peculiar. But I've heard a lot of like pro composers like that are bigger than us. They have that in their little contracts too.
I mean, I kind of address, it's not in the contract per se, but it's something I do discuss when I'm going over the contract with them, because I have like a stipulation in there about, expenses, which I think is important, because I learned that the hard way. Like some of the early films that I would do, I would end up blowing my whole pay, reinvesting the money into producing the score. So I made those be separate things. Like, here's my fee that you pay me, and then the music budget, which you can decide what that is. And then I explained to them, like, if you give me $10 for the music budget, don't expect, a string quartet or something, because that's not going to happen. So I said I can deliver you a score with whatever you decide the music budget will be, but just realize the bigger it is, the better I can do. Because I make sure that I let them know that I have other people I can bring in, like other, like mixers. I can bring a mixer in on this. I could hire a guitarist. I could hire a violin. I could do there's all these options I can do, if you're willing to pay for it. If not, it's just going to be me and a computer. That's what you're going to get. I try to just kind of let them know that ahead of time. I also have a stipulation that says if they specifically request like an ensemble or like a live music, like I want you to use this person, they have to pay for that on top of the expenses. Like if
that makes sense.
So if they come to me and say, okay, here's the budget, blah blah blah, and we want you to hire the Los Angeles.
I know, yeah.
Philharmonic or Symphony Orchestra. I would be like, okay, that's great. I'm gonna have more expenses, on top of that, and that is not going. Hiring them is not going to come out of my expenses because I have things I need to do anyway. Because like if I have a hard drive that breaks or something, I can't. I remember need to use that.
Yeah, I remember like one of the producers were so mad when they basically wanted to do little string quartet for one of the scores, and he's like, "Well, here's $10,000. I think this should be fine, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, should be enough," but then he was so mad when basically it was over that. And, we needed to get like an audio engineer, bring him over to like this, studio where the quartet was. And then, we need to hire more and more people. And he's like, why are you getting more people? Aren't you the composer? Can't you just do everything like audio engineering? Can you and I was trying to tell him, well, it's separate jobs. I mean, composers are composers. You have the engineers, you have the mixers. I can't be like the one guy to do everything. Like my thing is to do music for the film, to compose the music, I mean, I can produce music by myself, but if you're using live instruments, then that's, my job is pretty much like done there, Have you done how many projects have you done with like live instruments?
Not, to be honest, not that many.
Not that many? I mean, me neither.
They don't really pay that much. The last project I did, I used a single live instrument, but I got a lot of use out of it. I was able to pretty much fake a string orchestra with it. We just multi-tracked it a lot of times.
I've done it with choir once when I got like one girl and she was doing different voices, and it's like the whole choir.
But it makes a world of difference. It sounds so much better than just just programming stuff. And even if you layer it with the program stuff, the thing I found surprising, because I just had a violinist, so I record all the violins. Obviously, with the violinist, I also record the violas with the violinist. He just detuned his violin. Viola parts. But I had cello parts, and I could not hire a cellist. I could only afford one person. So, so the cellos were still samples, but when they were playing at the same time as the live violin, they sounded live.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's a weird thing, even though I knew they were fake. It's such a weird. I don't know how to explain it when you listen to it. They sound like they're an actual cello section. It's weird.
Yeah. Have you had I guess like when you do work with live instruments, like you have to also properly record them.
Yes.
And I remember I did this big mistake by bringing actually this microphone to a string recording. Because I'm like, I don't have a condenser microphone. I have a dynamic microphone. And it just like it sounded horribly. So I ended up just like basically wasting the whole budget for it and just using the libraries instead.
Depending on what you're going to do, if you want it to sound natural, you have to have high quality.
Quality mic.
But I mean, if you're going to do something like that's more esoteric, let's say, or something where you're going to be doing sound design or something with it, then it really doesn't matter that much what you record with it. I mean, it depends on what you're going to do and how much detail you want. But like you could record something on an iPhone and turn it into something cool sounding.
Yeah, you could.
It won't sound.
Yeah, it just won't sound as
natural.
Good.
No.
Yeah.
But you can get away with it.
That's true. What's your like musical background? Like when did you start playing instruments?
I started playing the violin probably like I want to say when I was in the 3rd grade, I think.
So like what, 7, 8 years old? Right?
Yeah, I guess like eight sounds right.
Yeah.
So I played that, and I played that through high school. I was never good at it. just because I didn't want to practice. It's not that I didn't want to practice. Like I was lazy, but like my first few years of doing it, I practiced all the time, and then one day, like my mom came in, she's like, "Oh, it's sounding really good," and it terrified me that she could hear me practicing, and so I never wanted to practice again because I didn't like that they could hear me doing it.
Well, at least she gave you a little compliment.
Because I felt self-conscious. So then I kind of stopped practicing after that. Yeah. And then shortly after, I kind of taught myself how to play the piano, but that was good because I had a keyboard and I could just put headphones in and I could just practice as much as I wanted. So I played the violin through high school, taught myself piano around maybe the 5th or 6th grade. Okay. I didn't start taking kind of formal lessons until high school. But around that time, I was kind of getting more into writing as well, like writing music. Because when I went into my high school orchestra, the first day I was there, my orchestra director was like, "Oh, if anyone just writes anything, we can play through it or whatever." And that just intrigued me. I thought that was cool. I was like, "Oh, write music, okay,
that's cool.
How do I do that?" I have no idea how to do that, but it sounds cool. And so I got notation software. I got Sibelius. And I had no idea how to use it. I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. And I just got one of my little keyboards. I plugged it in and I just recorded in the MIDI, and it looked terrible. And I gave it to my orchestra director, and he's like, "Well, this is interesting notation. Yeah. I don't know how we're gonna play this." But then slowly over time, when I started taking the piano lessons, they also kind of became music theory lessons as well, and I kind of better learned how to notate things properly with the proper rhythms and made sure things looked right. I was also really into film too at the time. I loved film. I liked making movies. I never thought I was gonna be. I wanted to be a film composer per se. I just liked composing was just a hobby I had. I thought I was gonna go into film. I thought I was gonna go to film school.
Oh, so you wanted to be a director?
Yeah, at first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I was in high school, that's what up until applying for colleges, that's what I thought I was going to do. I was looking at film schools initially, nice. And I liked film scores because I liked movies. I just liked listening to them. But then I forget exactly. I think one of my friends made a movie, and we didn't, we wanted some music, or we didn't want to use because we, before that we just just grab a soundtrack. Just throw Pirates of the Caribbean on it or something, and I was like, "Oh, let's maybe we could do so, or maybe we could get a band or something." And I was like, "Well, I'm kind of composing just anyway, just for fun, not for film, just to do it because I like it. Yeah. Why don't I try something?" And I thought it was really fun. I really liked doing it. At that time, for that one, I didn't score a picture. I just wrote just a piece of music for the movie, for the end credits or something that. But just the idea of doing it, I'm doing this for a movie, really intrigued me. Yeah. And so then I started thinking okay, can I minor in composition while I'm majoring in film, and maybe I could score my own movies or something that I'm working on. But then eventually it came to a point where it's I had to make a decision. Am I gonna? Because I started getting more into the film score, and I started doing research. I figured out what a DAW was and all that stuff, and because I used to record everything onto my keyboard. You had 4 tracks or 5 tracks.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah, I used to have a Zoom. Yeah, 4 track.
So I would record. I recorded that way, and then I found out about DAWs. My first one was Fruity Loops, which
same. Okay. Fruity Loops. Yeah. I remember that.
My friend had one who was making beats, and I was like, "What's this?" He's like, "Exactly." It's music production software. I'm like, "Oh, cool." I was getting to that point. I was applying for colleges, and some I was applying as a film major, and some I was applying as a music major. And I had to make a decision, so I just decided to go with
the music major.
With the music major, yeah. And I ended up minoring in film.
Okay.
For my bachelor, so I still got to do it. I still got to make movies and stuff. I scored a lot of student films. But it's pretty much just been music and music.
Just music.
Nothing but music. And then after I did my bachelor's, I went back and got my master's as well in music composition.
Oh, so you actually got master's in music? I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yeah.
I never did a film scoring degree. Both of my degrees in music composition are purely classical training, which. I mean, the good thing about film scoring is it doesn't really matter what approach you take, where you come from. I mean, people come from rock bands. It really doesn't matter. But for me, that's been a very pivotal thing. And it's something I actually even thought about when I was applying for my master's. Do I want to go do a film scoring
Mhm.
masters, or do I want to do like a classical training, traditional
Mhm.
masters? And I got accepted into a film scoring program,
Yeah.
and I turned it down. I decided to stay
With
classical
classical, huh?
because I felt like at the time, and I still think it's true, that most of like film scoring degrees is primarily about technology, and primarily about, I mean, it's not entirely, but primarily about working with samples and
Yeah,
music.
yeah.
It's more about music production,
Yeah.
and less about yourself
Mhm.
as an artist, and your voice
Mhm.
and technique in
Yeah.
terms of writing music. So and I had talked to other composers who were like
Mhm.
more experienced than me, who were like in the business,
Mhm.
and they talked about like, oh no, you can learn that stuff at any point.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you can just learn by experience. You don't have to have
Mhm.
a degree, to figure out how Cubase works or figure
Yeah,
out
yeah.
how Pro Tools works. So you can just do it,
Mhm.
and the more you do it, the more you learn.
Mhm.
And so that interests me. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I feel like I have more to learn in terms of writing music, just like putting notes down and coming up with ideas.
Yeah.
So that's what I decided to do.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah. Yeah. Because like for me, since I've actually never studied music, I come from rock background, and I'm doing this, so it's like I always found like music theory and like all those classes boring when I was younger.
They can be boring.
Yeah, because like I remember I tried going to like a music theory class, and I was just like, man, just like I just wanted to get out of here so I can come back home to my guitar and start like rocking out and stuff, right? But then, so what I did, I took like a bunch of crash courses when I got my first composing job back in 2014. Basically, a friend of mine was in acting and also producing the film, and he was like, "Hey, so you do rock music, so why don't you do this orchestral?" I didn't do the whole score. I did like 3-4 tracks for the film. But I remember like thinking like I have no idea how to do orchestral music at all. So I had to take like quick crash courses in like music theory, music composition online, like from some weird website. But I remember like I learned a lot just from those little crash courses. And I know a lot of composers probably hate me for saying that, because you can go either way. You can go through school, or you can just go like heads into the working, like force of a composer, but you still have to have the background and understanding how music theory works, right?
I think so. I mean, some people just have phenomenal ears, and so they can just hear what works.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like they don't know why it works; they just hear that it does.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just have really, really good internal pitch.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I find knowing the theory helps me figure out how to do things,
Mm-hmm.
and also, if nothing else, because I'm breaking theory rules all the time.
Yeah,
but if
yeah,
nothing
yeah.
else, if I don't know what to do,
Mm-hmm.
I think like, okay, what's just the basic, like, don't even think about it if it's good. What's the
Mm-hmm.
most basic thing that like you would do here?
Yeah.
Like, where would you go? And then I think about that, and then that makes me think like, okay, well, that's what you normally would do. What if I did this instead?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you don't have to use it all the time per se,
Yeah.
but it's good to just have it. It's just like
Yeah,
having
yeah,
this like
yeah.
this toolkit that you can pull out and
Yeah.
use at your leisure.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you're trying to do a lot of about knowing about music theory is understanding how certain things, how to achieve certain
Yeah.
emotional
Like emotions.
responses.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll hear someone who maybe doesn't know that much about music theory,
Mm-hmm.
and like they do something and it doesn't achieve what they're trying to do.
Oh yeah.
Because they don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, because we're talking a lot about music theory, but like people should not think like music theory. It's not music rules.
Yeah.
They're not rules.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
There's nothing to tell you have to go from 1 to 5.
Mhm.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
It's just observations of
Yeah,
the
it's-
last
it's-
500 years of music.
It's more of like a language and like
it's
grammar.
It's a language
Yeah.
and a grammar, and it's
Yeah.
also an understanding of conventions and and how these composers, have accomplished
Mm-hmm.
these certain feelings, these certain pieces, and like why they work the way they do. And so when you understand that, then you know how to do certain things. Like, okay, like if I want it to sound smooth,
Mm-hmm.
I need it to be very lyrical. I know to do this. If I want it to be more like jagged sounding, I know I can do this. Or like I need it to sound more grounded, or like I need to sound like there's a home here, like we've arrived somewhere. I know how to do this, or I need to make it sound like we're going somewhere. I need to do that. Like the music theory really helps you to do that, and also it's stuff you can ignore too if you want. Like normally I would do this, but if I wanted to achieve this effect, maybe there's another way I can achieve this effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One thing I want to talk about. So lately I've been finding myself doing more like minimalistic scores, since every time I would do something over than like 11 instruments or something, like producers, directors, they always say like, can you make it like more minimalistic so it's not like that prominent in the score? Do you find that like lately?
Well, I'll be honest, I really like minimalist music.
Oh, okay.
Like in terms of like concert music, and like classical composers, I identify a lot with them. But when I'm doing film music, I try to avoid it to a certain extent. Like I try to pick my moments. You know what I mean? Just because I feel like for some composers, like that's kind of their default, is doing something minimalistic. Because it's faster to do, because you can just have a an ostinato and you just copy and paste it all over the place.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not to say there's anything wrong with it, but I personally try to just avoid it, and again, like pick my moments when I am going to do something minimalistic. But like you said, like if you want something that's not in your face, you kind of have to do it. Like
you have to do
the last film I did is very minimalistic, but that's also because they didn't want, like, I tried doing things that had a little bit more movement, not rhythmic movement, but a little bit more melodic movement to it, and they always felt it was too distracting. I even got to the point where some of the cues, like, there's almost like no rhythm at all.
Yeah,
like it's just
like droney sort of.
Well, I mean, it's not like droney in terms of synths. This is the same project I was using the live violins on. It was very traditional, relatively speaking.
Okay,
but the strings are hardly moving.
Yeah,
at all. And I almost felt kind of like, oh, like, is that, like, I mean, I know that's what they want, but like, is that good? I don't know. That's what they wanted, so that's what I ultimately did. But yeah, but it worked. But it worked for the film. That's what the film needed. It needed that. But that's not my default to do that necessarily. Again, like I had to pick my moments, and also there's different kinds of minimalism too. It just depends. Like the same film, like the one of the cues, I knew it was going to be minimalistic because it also had to do with the story too, because it had to do with deja vu, and I like the idea of things repeating, and so that was another reason I decided to lean more minimalistic. But even when I was doing my early versions of cues, then they were a lot more rhythmic, a lot more rhythmical. And I was doing all these like polyrhythms and stuff to try to make it a little bit interesting, even though I'm being repetitive. And they didn't like any of that. They felt it was they just wanted to just hold for all eternity. Yeah. So that's what I did. But also I think the difference between for minimalism between concert music and film is that, so what I was saying is the difference in minimalism for film versus minimalism for concert music. Concert music, you can go on for a very long time. The fact you're repeating something over and over again kind of becomes the idea of the piece. If you play like the same two chords for 30 minutes, that to me, that's something. That takes like, it's very bold to do something like that. Yeah. But in terms of film music, I feel like a lot of times people default to that because it's just the easiest. It's not because they're trying to make a statement. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of that's why I tend to avoid it, because I don't want to come across like I'm trying to be lazy. Even though I do like minimalist stuff, I really do like it a lot. I try to like show that I'm putting effort into it. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do the same thing. It's like it's minimalistic, but it's in a way that it's always changing, like evolutions and stuff like that. So it doesn't sound the same like at all.
No, but that's good because I have heard people who like maybe they're not as experienced or whatever, maybe they just started composing and they'll just take an ostinato and just loop it for
that's horrible,
and it doesn't change ever, like nothing, it's in the same key all the time, and that's what I don't personally like. It just because it seems like it's being lazy.
It is kind of lazy. I mean, like I've heard other composers, do the same exact thing where they just like copy paste the same little rhythm, but like they'll move it to different instruments, but it's the same thing. It's
Yes.
but I don't like to do that. I like to, like when I compose, I usually try to play things live. I don't like to like punch things in. You know, like do you usually play live too? Or do
It
you
depends. Sometimes, yes, I will play things in live.
Well, unless they're super complicated, yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes I do. If it's something is complicated, I try to sketch it out. Actually, I find that I write better if I can write things down, like literally write things down.
Oh, so you actually write things on a paper?
Well, not paper. I mean like in a notation software.
Oh, okay.
I do
Gotcha.
sketch things from time, but that's usually because if I don't have like a notation software open, I
Oh,
don't
okay.
want to forget what I'm doing, and I'll just like scribble it out on
Wow.
some music paper.
Yeah.
But like if I can get like a sketch,
Mm-hmm.
a notated sketch. Maybe not all the instruments are there, but like the bass, like okay, like kind of like what you were saying earlier about like
Skeleton.
a little skeleton,
Yeah.
and you have like the strings. Like that's usually what I do. Like okay, like let me at least get the strings through this scene, and then I'll take that and pop it into Cubase, and then I'll start kind of orchestrating from there and working on the arrangement, and also that'll kind of spur my creativity in terms of like, okay, well maybe the strings are doing this, maybe I could have the the clarinets could be doing this kind of rhythm along with them or something. Percussion too, I usually tend to play in myself unless it's something very very specific that I want.
Percussion is like the only thing that I usually punch in because like I can't really play fast drums on the piano because it's awkward, right? Like it's just like one note like doing. But yeah, like percussions are. But also I try to move the notes like a little away from each other too, just to humanize. Because it's like when you just punch it all in, it sounds like a little robot is playing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so there's one topic that lots of composers disagree with me here.
Okay.
Bass.
Okay. What about the bass?
Contrabass. I have it in the middle.
You have it in the middle.
In the middle, yes.
Okay.
In
the middle, if your tempo, or in terms of voicing.
In
In terms of your panning.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything wrong
in
with
the
that.
middle.
I've seen. Oh, wait.
Like right there. Well, here, like if you look at here, let's make it bigger. So bass is like right here, like in the middle.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I've seen, because there's different ways to seat your instruments. There's there's the way America seats their orchestra is different for the way Europe.
Oh, is it? I didn't know
yes,
that. Okay.
It is, yeah.
Huh.
I mean, and also like there's variations, like there's not like one thing. There's just like a general, structure, but there's always like little variations. Like usually with the brass, like sometimes like the French horns or the trumpets are more in the middle. Sometimes they're more on the side. That stuff can kind of change, but generally speaking, there's a certain layout. I have seen basses in the middle, but in the back. Like not in front of anything else.
Yeah, the way I have it, like
so
it's
I've
like
never
in the
seen
back
this.
there, yeah.
So like I mean, again, like at the end of the day, like we're working in the box, so you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I would say if you were going to do this live, that would not work.
Probably not,
because
yeah.
they would be in front of the wind instruments.
Yeah.
They'd be blocking them because the orchestra is not seated just haphazardly. Like they've put people in certain spots for a reason. I mean, the strings are at the front because they're the quietest instruments in the whole orchestra.
Yeah.
They can't be in the back. Everyone else will drown them out. Also, that's why there's more string players than wind players.
Yeah.
Because they need to project more. Also, that's why the woodwinds are in front of the brass, because the brass would drown out the woodwinds, so on, so on.
Yeah.
But for this, like, I mean, if that sounds good for you, like, I experiment with where my basses are. Usually, like what you see in both American and European orchestras is they put the basses behind the cellos, and the reason for that is a lot of the times the basses are playing the same exact thing the cellos are. Not all the time, but in like classical music, that's why it's called the double bass, because they're doubling the bass. The cellos traditionally, for Mozart, they would have the bass line, and the doubles would be playing the exact same thing, just down an octave. So just the tradition became like, let's just put them together because they play a lot of the same kind of stuff. That obviously that's not the case anymore, in modern music and in film music, that usually the basses are doing something else than the cellos.
Yeah, usually I have like a bass line that goes completely different from cello, and I don't know, I just like the bass all low end to stay in the middle.
But I agree with you. It sounds good to have the bass in the middle, and actually the last film I did for the string string ensemble I had, I wasn't using like a giant like symphony orchestra size strings. I had the live violins and the or the live violin, pretending to be a violin section, viola section, but my goal was to try to make it sound a little bit smaller, like a chamber strings. But for that, I put the basses right in the center, put them right in the middle. Yeah. But in that case, even though it's still Fantasyland, there's nothing behind them. Yeah. So I didn't feel uncomfortable doing that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know what you mean,
yeah. But I don't see any problem with putting them in the middle, especially since there's no physical physical reasons why you can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, and they're also like way behind, my brass and woodwinds, so they're not really even in the mix. Since this is have you seen the software MIR Pro?
Yes, I've never used it, but I know I want to get it because I like how you can pan everything and literally like see, like you go here, here, and you can visually see it. I really like that. Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's like right behind. For this project I have it more in the middle. It's usually like behind the choir too. So it's kind of like low, like way behind in the mix. So even though this is not really like physical representation, but it still kind of does this simulation of the physical seating. But yeah, I don't know. Like
now that I see, because you zoomed in, I thought they were a little bit. I thought they were in front. Right there. Oh, okay, I see them because they were kind of covered. Yeah. Well, actually, no. I've seen that. I've seen that. Yeah. I haven't seen the percussion behind the bass. Usually, what I've seen is the basses will be in the very back, and then the percussion will be on either side of them. Yeah. And then
usually it's like right there for me. It's just for this project it was there, but
and then the choir usually tends to be elevated. So where the choir is fine. They're always behind their orchestra, and they usually put them on risers. So there's no. That'll sound. They're kind of slightly above the orchestra. Their voices project out over the orchestra. Yeah. So So the fact that any instruments are in front of them. Yeah. That's not gonna affect them in any way.
Well, actually, in this software, I think you can actually choose where the elevation is even.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Okay. So like it's all kind of like goes up. Yeah. From here. So
like it would be.
Like it would be. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. I remember like when I got this, I mean, it blew my mind how like really good it sounds, because I used to pan things left and right.
Panning can be very annoying.
Yeah,
and also I hate sometimes how the way certain libraries pan things because it's not the way I want to pan things. Like just record everything in the middle.
Yeah,
and I will put it where I want it.
Yeah, exactly. I know like some Spitfire libraries have that.
Yeah, Spitfire is notorious for doing that.
Yeah. It's always like their way. But then when you try to pan it, it just like messes up the stereo image where, and I feel like
which you can fix a little bit with reverb. It kind of helps a little bit, but it's still very annoying.
Yeah. Talking about reverb, do you use like one specific reverb or?
It depends. Recently I've been using Valhalla Room a lot.
Okay. Yep.
I got that. I think it sounds really good. Before that, because even though I use Cubase now, I think I was talking to you about this earlier. I used to use Logic, and I think the reverb in Logic is very good, especially considering it comes with the software. It's a very good sounding reverb. The one I kind of want to get, it's escaping me now, but I forget. It's similar to Mir.
Is it this one? Altiverb?
Altiverb. That's
there
it.
You go.
That's like the next one I want to get.
Yeah. This one is awesome, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I use 3 different reverbs. So I have Altiverb for all my orchestral things. Then I have my capital chambers for like guitars, vocals, and stuff like that, because usually that's like a more chamber reverb. It's better. And then the Valhalla Shimmer for solo instruments. So, for example, if I want to have like this eerie sounding like violin or something, and I don't want to mess with my Altiverb, but like I just want to have like this extra little reverb, and I'll just usually have the Shimmer.
Now, do you? Yeah. I mean, people take different approaches, and also it depends on what you're trying to do, because sometimes you want something to sound natural. Sometimes you don't really care. You want to sound experimental, so you don't care. If you use 2 different reverbs at the same time or whatever. So do you like? So let's say you have an orchestra and a guitar, so you have 2 different reverbs for that, right? Do you run them through one more reverb together so it sounds like they're in the same room, or do you?
I would usually run the guitar through Altiverb as well, and then add capital chambers on top.
On top of it.
Yeah, on top of it. So or like behind it actually.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say, because I tend to like. I mean, obviously, if I'm trying to make it sound natural, I have them all run through the same the same reverb.
Mm-hmm.
But even when I'm doing something experimental, if I put like kind of similar to what you were doing, like if I have like two different reverbs,
Mm-hmm.
like if I have like a synth and I have like a giant reverb on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have like another instrument that I only have like a minimal amount of reverb,
Yeah.
and it's a different reverb I'm running on it, I'll still run those to one more reverb at the very end.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So it just sounds like they're in the same space.
Yeah.
Even though they're fake synths, and it doesn't really matter. Just in my mind, it does matter that they exist in the same space.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's naturally, it sounds naturally when you have like one more reverb for everything in a room. Yeah, it just sounds like everything is in one place. I feel like, I used to do that mistake before when I would run different reverbs on like different orchestra sections.
Because then they decay at different times.
Yeah,
and it sounds
just was
weird.
bad. Yeah, it was
not for like, I mean,
Yeah.
well, for orchestra, that's really bad because they are supposed to be in the same room together.
Mhm.
For obviously for like synthy music, it doesn't really matter that much because it's fake anyway. It's like where's that sound going to exist? It's just, to me, it just makes all the difference. I mean, I kind of think about it in the way that like a band, like, if you're a guitarist, you might crank a bunch of reverb on you, but at the end of the day, the band still exists in that space of the the stadium or whatever together, even though they're all doing their own things with their own effects. They're still in the same spot. So that's like kind of the approach that I take with synths and stuff like that.
That's interesting. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, because I don't know if I actually do that for synths. I know I do that with the guitars and like vocals and stuff, but usually when I have a synth, it's like a different little thing happening. So maybe I should start adding synths to Altiverb as well.
I mean, you can do whatever you want. I put like only a
a
tiny bit of reverb, like at the very, like, so like I said, like the example I used before, like I might have a synth with a giant reverb on it, and then another synth with like a little bit and a different reverb on it. Yeah. And it's just like a little bit of it, and then I just run both of those through like a third reverb.
Well, that third reverb, is it like cranked up or is it?
Just, I mean, well, it depends on what I want to do.
It depends what you want to do.
Most of the time, like, it's just a tiny bit, so there's a little bit of decay at the end where they just kind of decay together. That's most of the time what I do, because I don't want like an abundance of reverb. It's just to kind of just trick the ear into thinking they're in the same location, the same venue.
Yeah, like do you like more like dry sound or wet sound?
Again, it depends on what I'm going to do.
Yeah, exactly. But like if you do something for yourself, like your own little composition, not for a film.
Generally speaking, like if I was going to write something, more traditional, I prefer drier.
Okay.
Like not like no reverb.
Yeah.
But smaller, just because I like hearing the quality of the instruments. I don't like them being like blurred. I really like, hearing the little nuances, like hearing the bow scrape on the strings. I like hearing key clicks. I like stuff like that. Not everyone's like that. Some people hate instrument noise. I like it. I think it adds character. But if I'm doing something synthy, then it's like could be anything. I could do. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And then like for orchestral stuff, like I usually tend to make it a little bit bigger. But not like, I don't go crazy. I don't sound like they're playing in the Grand Canyon or anything like that. I try to make it sound like as natural as possible, but with like it's a little bit more wet than a smaller ensemble.
Because like with film usually you also get dialogue on top of it. So I mean the reverb usually dies there anyway. So yeah, it's like whatever sounds better. I was gonna say, so like the way I do it, so. If I do something for like a film or something, I usually put more reverb on it. Just, as I said, like, it dies in the dialogue and usually music gets quieter. And I would do automation on reverb too. So when I know then where there is no dialogue and music is more permanent, I would usually dial back on a reverb. And I don't know, like do you use like automations at all?
On reverbs? Not really, just only because I feel like, again, like, I mean, if it was something synthy, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But like, if I'm trying to make it sound natural, like, you can't really turn the reverb down in a room. You know what I mean?
Well,
I know what you mean. What you mean, like in terms of for the film, you're gonna bring it out a little bit more, which is interesting. But like for me, like I wouldn't do that. Like, because I'm thinking of it as a recording, and just in my mind, like it just seems kind of odd you know what I mean? Even though it's for a film and you can do anything you want. There's no rules.
Yeah.
It's just for me personally, I've never really done anything like that. I try to keep it like as natural sounding as possible.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I don't really change the reverb that much.
Yeah, it's
but
not
just
drastic,
like
but still, just to me, like I don't know if I could even do, like I don't know if I could get past like a mental block. Like, but that can't happen. You know, like I don't think I could do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that conversation with my other composer friend, and he was just like, "What are you doing? Like, what? It's not."
I mean,
natural.
I'm not like, like super opposed to it. It's just like I don't think it's something I would do personally.
Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah. Well, that's a cool thing. I mean, we're composers, but we all do things differently. We don't have to like stick to the same little rule, the same guidebook. So, and usually, like our job, only we know what we're doing, really, because like directors. I mean, if they're musicians, they might know what we're doing, but usually they have.
Well, hopefully you've never worked with a director that thinks they're a musician, because that's a nightmare. It is a nightmare to.
I worked with a couple directors that were like one was a good musician.
But were they actually musicians? Because I had a director who thought they were musicians.
Well, I had that too. Okay. Yeah, but when they say like, yeah, can you put triplets on those triads? I'm like, what? I'm like, what? What are you saying? Like, well, one other thing was like one producer. He wrote me this email. He's like, hey, this cue sounds kind of weird. Can you make it more blue?
He probably had synesthesia.
like, okay, make it blue, I guess.
Well, I had a director tell me to use major and minor chords together. Whoa.
Yeah.
Never mind, they've been doing that since the Renaissance. But
I know it.
He thought he was being groundbreaking.
I know. She's just like, major and minor chords all at the same time.
Yeah, just use a mix of those.
Oh, man.
I am.
It's like, same thing with, I had a director that I basically had a solo violin playing, and he's like, can you turn that flute down?
Well, you got it. Like, no one knows what any instruments are, so I just let it slide. Like, sure, the flute's coming down.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah. And then I'm thinking, because like I didn't get it right away. I'm like, what flutes? Like, what the hell are you talking? There's no flutes. He's like, there's a flute that like plays. Can you turn it down? I'm like, okay. Well, I guess the violin is a flute now.
Yeah. I've also like sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I encountered this, I was a little confused, but since then I've kind of learned to interpret it. But like, have you ever had someone ask you to add more bass? Because at the time I thought they literally meant add more basses, not like more. They wanted more low end. That's what they wanted.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, it needs more bass, and then I put more bass, and they're like, no, like more, like more. Like, what do you mean, like?
Let me see. Somebody commented there. Oh. Today my son asked, can I have a bookmark, and burst into tears. He's 11 years old, and he doesn't know my name is Brian.
I don't know what that means.
I do not know what that means. Elaborate. Wow.
Oh, because his son doesn't know what a book is. His son is used to Kindles and stuff like that. Oh.
Okay, there we go. Got it.
I don't think about that. I mean, I can't remember the last time I've picked up a physical book either. I do everything on Kindle.
Yeah, it's been a while. Seriously, like it's been a while since I've seen a book. Well, not seen a book, like I picked up a book and actually read a book. I mean, yeah. The other thing is, you know how some composers are switching to tablets and like iPads?
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I think it's cool. Like, it's something I'm looking into, because I haven't, an old iPad mini just laying around not doing anything. So I'm thinking about integrating it into my system. I'm still trying to decide if I'm going to use Metagrid or Lemur, or I think Metagrid is probably where I'm going to go, because they already have a lot of like open source, like people have already kind of made templates for it, because I'm not good with I mean, not that it requires knowing computer programming per se, but I'm just not good with like like assign this command to this button, and then you drag this in and make it this size, and then put that. Like, I hate stuff like that. Like, I don't mind like moving stuff around that's already there and kind of customizing it to what I want and getting rid of things and stuff like that. But like, as far as just like having just a black screen and I have to add all the buttons in and assign what it does. And, I just don't want to really do that.
I don't know. Like, for me personally, I don't really see a need for it just yet. Because like I don't know, my workflow wouldn't really change, because I still have my little faders and if
I wouldn't use it for faders. I would just use it for like commands and stuff that I use all the time.
But like you have your keyboard and stuff with like shortcuts, and like what kind of commands do you think would be useful with that?
Well, for me, for Cubase, I would like opening and closing folders, hiding folders, like that kind of stuff. That's what I would use.
You mean like if like this, just opening and closing like folders like that, or what do you mean?
Yeah, but also hiding them and unhiding.
Oh, hiding them. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
So like
gotcha,
if I only want to see strings, I can see only the strings, and then I can unhide everything else or what.
Yeah.
I don't know like how I would set it up. Like if I would have like a hide all or hide or unhide.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's like just little shortcuts,
yeah,
like little buttons. Oh, okay,
freezing tracks probably, because
that's good. Yeah, yeah.
Stuff like that. Like basic things, like I probably would not, like if I already have like a key command for, I probably wouldn't put those kinds of things in there.
Yeah, I've heard that Steinberg, they're about to come out with like a little software for your iPhone to do that with Cubase.
That's good. I think Logic has something like that as well. I think they came out with it or I think it's been out for a while, but they've like majorly improved it with the new update they did with Logic, which I do not have, so I don't know. But yeah, that would be smarter than also like changing the grid. Things like that. That can be kind of annoying. Opening, closing controller lanes. And then for me, we already had this conversation earlier. Like doing expression mapping with a tablet would be a lot easier. Especially like with stuff I just want to try, because doing it in the lanes is not hard. But like if I'm just trying to like just hear stuff, I would have to go over and change the MIDI channel to what I want it to be. And that would be kind of annoying. Whereas I just have a button. It's like I want to hear what this sounds like. I just hit it and then it just changes it for me.
Oh, what do you think about the so South Korea right now? They're making a software that will compose music by I guess like watching the film or anything, like to picture to video game, and it will sync up exactly with the frames. It will do the emotional stuff and everything that composer does. Like, what do you think about that?
Well, I think they've tried stuff like that, not quite like that, but I think they've tried AI that's tried to compose music, and it's been terrible.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried, but at the same time I'm slightly worried.
I am kind of worried because AI can get.
It's only going to get better.
Yeah.
It only gets exponentially better over time. So right now I'm not worried, but in the future I don't know. I mean, I would hope that AI can never, match the emotional quality that humans just naturally have. I don't know. Like it may be able to like fake certain things, like, oh, I know that when I put these two chords together they sound sad. Like, but that's different than like actually having a human think about like what that means and how do I accomplish that. You know what I mean? So I think it'll be something that's kind of intangible that they can't do. Like I think like yes, they'll check. Oh yeah, that sounds sad. Check the box. Like it'll probably be able to do that, but I don't know if it'll like actually elicit like a deep emotional response out of a human being.
Well, you know how there is this, what's that robot called? Sophia? Have you seen those YouTube videos where this robot I've speaks to people basically, and then she makes jokes and like she, does this like whole facial thing. So, I mean, by looking at that, it's already like, I'm thinking like 10 years, 15 years down the road, we might have like friends as robots and stuff, like walking around with us, like actually people robots that you can like talk to and share stories with, and they will like respond accordingly. So I'm feeling like somewhere down the road there might be some kind of like software that will, well, it's not gonna eliminate our job, but it will probably take a good chunk out of it.
Yeah,
I
mean, there's already, because
if you think about it, sample libraries. I mean, we took jobs from.
But also, you have to think about like the industry's changing all the time. Like people don't think about like back when there were silent movies, there used to be orchestras that played along with the silent films. Yeah. And then once they got sound in them, they went away. I mean, obviously now we record them. Hopefully, the samples are taken, but it's the same kind of thing. But I don't think the orchestra will ever go away.
Well, I mean, not like completely, but like
no. I mean they'll slowly, but I don't think it'll ever disappear entirely.
Yeah.
But samples are getting a lot better. I don't know. I don't know. It's really hard to say right now. I think. Yeah. But still, like when you listen to them back to back, there's just no comparison. There's just like even though if you could listen to like a programmed piece, just on its own with no other context, it sounds pretty good. And I think most untrained ears would not know the difference. But if you play it like, okay, here's the fake piece. Now here it is with real instruments. I think you can immediately tell the difference. I think it's very obvious. Yeah. At least to me, it is. I don't know.
Oh yeah, because we have the trained ears for that. Yes, we know exactly what sounds real, what doesn't sound real. But I mean, majority of population probably wouldn't really tell the difference.
But I think but I think some of them
Okay.
would though. I think a lot of them would be able to tell. I don't think it would be like super obvious, but I think like they'd be able to tell like, I think I like that one more.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I like that one more than this one.
But I'm saying like if it's like nicely programmed, like with humanization, modulation, all that stuff, like very nicely programmed.
I don't know. I still haven't heard something that sounds like this is real.
Well, I was watching. What's his name? Alexandre Desplat, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably mispronouncing the name. So on his last Harry Potter film, there's basically a chunk of the score that's done with VSL samples and no real instruments. And when you listen to that, it's like, I think, what's the guy that mixes music for Hans Zimmer? Alan what? Masterson?
Alan Meyerson.
Meyerson, right? Yeah. So he mixed the score, and it's just like the way, I don't know, it's just like, it sounds pretty like convincing. But it was like what Harry Potter film came out in like what 2013 or 2012.
I think it was the last one. I think.
Yeah. So that was the last one. So it's already been like almost a decade after it, and samples improved in the last 10 years. So I'm thinking, it's gonna like cut close at some point. Yeah.
I mean, but
yeah.
I would to counter that. Like, I don't know. Have those cues ever been released on the soundtrack album? If they have, and I've heard them and I didn't know, then I would say yes. But if it's in the context of the film, I think it would be hard to know because there's so much other stuff going on. There's explosions and dragons flying around.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
You can't really tell if they're fake or not because there's just sonically so much going on.
Yeah.
But if it's on the soundtrack album and I listened to it and I couldn't tell, then maybe.
I don't remember if it. I mean, it probably should be on a soundtrack album. I just remember watching a video about it, how he's talking about how he basically. They didn't have enough time because like they were really close to the deadline, and he just said like, okay, let's just do this little mock-up thing, and it worked. And it was like an action scene too.
I mean, they still do that. I mean, they still layer in the fake instruments with the real instruments today. Anyway, like very rarely do anytime you hear like pizzicato strings, very rarely is that actually the string ensemble recorded.
Yeah, because you want to preserve arco and just want to have that. Yeah,
a lot of percussion too is usually fake. Sometimes, depends on the budget of the film.
Yeah,
but most of the time, I would say it's fake, even if the orchestra is real.
Yeah, it's so funny. So like, I'm so used to all these percussion libraries. Like now these days, when I'm watching a film, I can say, okay, this is heaviosity because it has like the specific, this is like the Berling percussion.
Yes.
This is the Spitfire Hans Zimmer percussion. It's just like, all those samples, I guess you mix them and you obviously get like a slightly different timbre or whatever. Not timbre, like different tone, but you can still hear the actual sample in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, I feel like, which was happening for me lately. Like every time I watch a movie and I hear different samples used, like, and when I recognize the samples, I'm like, oh man, like I wish it was like a real, orchestral thing happening, but it's not. Yeah. But anyway, I think we might wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we had a good conversation.
Yeah, nice conversation. Hopefully, whoever watched us live and whoever is going to watch this on YouTube and listen to it, you guys will learn something. If not, thank you for watching.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is Matthew. I'll put his little Instagram and your website, in the description. So please follow him. Well, thank you so much. Blessed out.